Hello everybody and welcome back to Mana on the Rocks. It is I, Joe. Joining me this week, you know him, you love him. It's Atlas, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello everybody.
It's an episode that ends in a 0 or a 5. You know what that means. It's a local brew. Joining us this week, we have a local Razaketh enjoyer, Scylla, bringing on a pretty spicy brew for us to talk about.
Heck yeah, hello, I'm very happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, without further ado, we got some announcements to get out of the way. Atlas, what's coming up in the near future?
Well, we got a couple things. So actually, this week we have one event on May the 3rd. It's an evening tournament over in Tacoma. The South Sound Gaming is doing their once a monthly tournament again. So this will be a bronze event for the Eminence Top Deck series that's happening in Tacoma, and you can find that on the topdeck.gg website. And then the week after, on May 11th, Tabletop Village in Seattle is hosting their first ever CDH tournament. It is going to be a 10 proxy event, but it will at least allow some proxies. You can register on their website at tabletopvillage.com. You can find a link for registration in the CADH Discord as well. So that's going to be really exciting. I'll be there. I think several other people from our crew will be there. Priscilla, are you all going to be there?
I don't think so, but we're definitely going to check it out at least and see if it's feasible for us to get to. I don't know how close or far it is from where we are in Seattle, so we'll have to kind of figure that out.
All right,
we'll have to have you there.
Hopefully we'll see you there. And then
sick.
2 weeks after that, on May 25th, we are having our event at our local shop, Gabby's Olympic Cards and Comics. It's the OCCS Season 3 Volume 2. And this is going to be our shop's first ever 100% proxy friendly tournament, which is super awesome. It's also going to be part of the Pacific Northwest qualifier circuit for their regional championships hosted by PDX, as well as a part of the Eminence Top Deck circuit. So there's a lot going on at this event. You should definitely try and make it if you're going to think that's possible. May 25th, the registration can be found either on the Olympic Cards and Comics website or through the topdeck.gg website as well. And then we also, it's a busy week, guys. We have another announcement for an event that just got posted. CEDH 6 is going to be hosted on June 15th. It's a 64-player event, so it's larger than it's ever been before. First prize is a Mox Diamond, 100% proxy, and we already have the first 10 slots or so filled. So gonna want to click that register button as soon as you can and get all regged. So you make sure you get your slot if you want to play, because I know I'll be there. I know that Priscilla will be there.
Absolutely.
And so we'll have a huge showing for this, and you'll want to meet all of the local content creators and players, because there are a lot who show up to that event.
Yep, CDH Events Markets the Laughing Dragon puts on a great show. It's a great time. You should come on down. And then as always, all of these events are going to be in the doobly-doo and show notes in case you want that ease of access to these events. But personally, I'd rather have ease of access to this week's lucky patron. Shout out to Dylan. Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for supporting us. You should come on down and get a drink with us.
So why don't you start by just giving a rundown of what, for those who don't know what the Black Cauldron is, just quickly what it is, a brief summary of the philosophy or whatnot, and what made you want to build this deck, what keeps you coming back to it.
Definitely. So the Black Cauldron, it's this Sans White kind of mid-range reanimator deck. Yeah, it's Rayhan Krom. We already said that. But yeah, Rayhan Krom, it's very I like to describe the deck as Tymna Krom, but take the strengths of green over the strengths of white, and that's my philosophy for it is very similar. Obviously less card draw in the command zone than Tymna Krom has, but you get all of the green creature tutors, you get all of these amazing effects that let you just cheat things out, and that really works really well with Reanimator. I feel you kind of need to have green in your Reanimator deck if you're gonna play that, and
it's so efficient just putting creatures where you need them to be.
Yeah, literally. But yeah, it's also win con wise, it's just very like Underworld Breach, Thassa's Oracle. It's pretty cut and dry. I do win a surprising amount of games with combat damage.
Woo!
Yeah,
My favorite.
It's a good mark for a deck here.
Because it's like the baseline I tell people is like when they're like, "Oh, you're just playing Rayhan for colors, right?" And I'm like, "Nah. You sacrifice Rayhan for like a Neoform. You get a good creature out of it, like." Depending on what 4-drop you choose to run, you get a good 4-drop, and then you turn Crom into a 7/7, and not many people can deal with the 7/7 Crom.
That's still a 3-turn clock.
That is a very big difference between 4 and 3. Or
Literally.
7, yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of like the whole gist of the deck. It's very good stuff. It's very mid-range, like good stuff, but it has a lot of open slots for like pilot specific and meta specific tech. That is another thing that like makes me love it is I can just kind of like pick and choose like, yep, I know this one slot is for this type of effect or this type of creature, and that's going to be really good if I go play over here, so I will tech that in and kind of make those tweaks and changes as I'm doing it. The list on Moxfield changes like constantly because I'm always just like, cool, I'm going on this stream, I need to make sure the list is right for this specific stream, and then I'm good. Or I'm going to this tournament, blah, 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 blah. Yeah,
that's super smart, because I know that's like it looks like your packages are relatively condensed, which is one of the things that I struggle with my list, which has a similar-ish philosophy behind it, but my packages tend to be rather expansive, and so like teching out one card means I actually have to tech out like 4 or 5 cards, because otherwise those other 4 cards are like relatively dead. And so it seems like it's really one of those really nice things. It's like really easy to adjust to whatever scene you're going into, like you said, because you're flexing like 1 to maybe 3 cards is what it looks like.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, like in the version that I have currently that I like updated this morning, like in preparation for coming on here, which is the one it's pretty close to what I played when I like top forward in our local.
Yeah.
It has like the Massacre Girl stuff in it, which is...
I do see that. I love that.
Yeah, that's my like little spice in here, because like as soon as I saw that card, I was like, Orcish Bowmasters is a really good card. How do I turn this into a draw engine? And then Massacre Girl lets you turn that into a draw engine.
And you went, oh, well, that's how we do it, obviously.
Yeah, and then like pairing that with like, okay, well, I had a 6-drop slot that was Con Sphinx, but now I can do a 6-drop that also pings things, like, and that works with Massacre Girl, so then I put Niv Mizzet in.
Yes!
And then Mayhem Devil's also there, because it's like, yeah, I don't have anything that really like has major payoff, but I know that a huge archetype in just CEDH is sacking treasures to do awful things. So
absolutely, Mayhem Devil's been on the up and up recently. I think I've been reconsidering putting it back into my list. Maybe
doesn't leave the list. If it's got red and black in there, there's a Mayhem Devil. it straight up just doesn't leave the list. No, I like the slot in, slot out philosophy. I operate in a very similar mind space where I play a lot of silver bullety style decks. So just knowing when to change out like your silver bullets for the ones that you actually need, I think is super, super critical, and is a really big payoff for playing like any sort of green creature-y deck. You just get...
Yeah, it's very like almost toolboxy, like creature toolbox. Like I think I say in like my primer that this deck feels like what Curious Control was trying to be like when it first came out like a couple of years ago, with like doing the like Niv Mizzet control stuff and like all that like in Sans White. But like you don't have to really think about the like Teamer Sabretooth stuff to do infinite mana or any of the stuff that deck was doing. And I think in newer versions that like have been made for it, I'm pretty sure the latest update for it is just more of like a Turbo Nas, like not really a control deck.
Yeah, it's not really much of a control deck anymore.
It's just kind of like the name that they got stuck with, which I feel. But this kind of feels like the actual like that kind of deck, and maybe like the kind of taking that position a little bit in like the Sans White, not necessarily control, but like mid-range grind kind of deck.
More like like aggressive mid-range or something like that.
Yeah.
I think Yeah, because I know that, like you mentioned before, your top four at one of our local events back like a while back, and we actually had the pleasure of playing together.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing your list like in the event and having like studied it a little bit beforehand because I knew you were going to be there. And then I played against it, and it inspired me to go back and like work on a similar-esque Sans White list that Joe and I had worked on previously, and that's where our current build for Hellcat came in, is from a lot of like the tech and development that you had, that you'd made in Sans White development. But I just swapped the commanders to Thrasios and Vile Smasher because I play a little more control-y.
Yeah, and can I say the tech choices, very, very good. A lot of the cards that the deck plays now, seeing them here, yeah, I can see we 100% bit off the right person, because good stuff, very, very good stuff.
Yay! I'm glad. I'm like doing a little claps. You can't see them, but I'm very happy.
Yeah, no, you did a lot of work for pushing forward Sans White decks, I think, because that archetype stalled out hard after like Curious and Yidris like bit it 3 or 4 years ago. So
bring back Yidris, dude. I love Yidris.
Yeah, it's good to see this color combination on the up and up in the world.
Definitely. That's funnily enough, that Yidris is kind of what got me here on this deck.
Oh, really?
Lore for Scylla, some Scylla lore, like, and you probably know this, but I was a Minsk and Boo player. That's what I was playing. Like,
yeah.
For my first full year of CDH, that was all of last year. I was like, yep, I love Gruul. I'm going to make my whole thing about playing Gruul. I had a pretty bad time. It was pretty hard.
As someone who also spent the first year of their life doing like Red X 2-color commanders, being like, yes, this is my identity. My entire self-worth is wrapped up into this like D-tier deck. I feel you.
Yeah, it was bad. It was tough. Like, I love Minsk and Boo, but it was hard. I was like, okay, I need to take a break off of this. Like, my mental is not doing very well. I have all these people that I know who are like, you're a pretty smart player, you're pretty good. You're just playing a Gruul deck, so go play something with blue in it. And I was like, fair, okay. So I was like, well, what's a cool thing that people are doing that's still like kind of rogue and like off meta, but like probably pretty good because it has a couple more colors in it. And that's what got me to Yidris, because I was like, well, I've never played like a Nas deck. I've never done actual like real Underworld Breach stuff, and this seems like a completely broken commander. So like, you know, obviously within really limited constraints of like, this is like a really hard to cast creature and I need a combat step. So like, yeah, like hopefully this works. I did that for like a weekend and was like, this was fun, but I don't think that's what it's gonna be. So maybe we go 5-color. And then I picked up Kenrith because of Atlas, actually. Like God. I think it was literally not the last time we played against each other. Like,
it was like the one before.
It was like the one right before when I was still playing Minsk and Boo. And
first round we fought each other.
Yeah, and I remember you being like, you set up Niv Mizzet and the One Ring, and I was like, this is the most oppressive, brutal thing I've ever played against.
Oh, good. I'm glad you also are able to reach that conclusion.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I want to do that to people. That's awesome.
Heck yeah.
I sleeved that up, and then I was making my own tweaks to it to be like, and this is like a whole different spiel, but like I was also having like this identity crisis of like, okay, I used to play competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, and my favorite deck in Yu-Gi-Oh was this like beatdown deck. It was like dinosaur beatdown. This is all like, it's a lot of board control and stuff, and just like punch face. And I was like, there's no deck that does that. And I was like, wait, this Kenrith list that Atlas played kind of does that. So like, maybe let's do that. And then I kept getting crazy with it and started to get into more reanimator focused stuff. And I had like a Kenrith list at some point that was like natural order, like Atraxa hidden commander, basically.
Oh,
holy!
Yeah, that seems sick.
It was pretty dope. Like, I would just be like, cool, natural order. And then I also had like Rurik Thar in it too as a secondary target. And people were like, are you like, what? How do you win? I'm like, I'm just gonna punch you. Like, I'm just gonna punch you. And played that for a little bit. And I think it was in Vegas, where I was playing a lot of games on that and was like, this is really fun, but it's still not scratching that itch that I really want. What am I thinking? And then Steven, who is the other Rayhan Crom pilot, they top 16'd LotusCon, I think it was LotusCon, like mid to late last year. I don't remember.
Okay.
But they had top 16 with that, and I saw it in one of like Ian's videos talking about it, and then I was like, okay, Rayhan Crom. I like Crom. Crom's a cool card, and Rayhan's neat. Like, what can I do with that? And I saw their list, and then was just like, I'm gonna make a couple tweaks off of the list that they had there, but I like the idea of it. And then I think I played it for like 4 games the weekend before Mox Masters, and then went to Mox Masters, like got to finals there with it, and was just like, oh yeah, this is my deck. Like, that immediately like took the Gruul training wheels off, and now I'm doing it. And
that's so awesome.
That's kind of how I got here. And
that is a fantastic origin story.
Unfortunately for Steven, who like is kind of the person who like originated this deck, and then I like added on to it, and like now we're both kind of co-brewing it. His deck came first, but now mine is the one that everybody knows because I've like top 4'd a couple of events with it. And so if Steven ever listens to this for some reason, I'm sorry. I know everyone calls it the Black Cauldron. My name is very catchy. I'm sorry. It was just a very catchy name for a deck.
That's okay. Credit where credit is due. I like that. Okay. Well, without much further ado, let's jump into it then.
Sweet.
Start talking about some card choices.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll just start with the creatures here and sort of run through them. We typically order things by CMC order. So your 1-cost slots, you have a couple of things. You have obviously like the mana dorks that are good, birds, Ragavan, Ignoble. You have a Deathrite Shaman, cards broken. The 1-cost that I see here that I'm a little interested with, like I think I mostly understand why, but Tinderwall. Like, it's not something you'd see typically in a shell like this, I don't think.
Yeah, Tinderwall was a little weird seeing that for me as well.
Yeah, so it is one of those cards that I kind of bounce around if it's like actually needed or not. It's in my brain, a lot of the, or I wouldn't say a lot of the cards, but some of the cards in here are like, okay, how do I not feed like a Mystic Remora and stuff like that? And this in my head is like my what would be like a Rite of Flame slot in like a Tymna Crom list kind of thing.
Sure. Okay.
That's like how I view it, as like, cool, this is like a 1-mana like ritual. It's a body, but also this deck is kind of has like this sub theme around Agatha's Soul Cauldron. So you get to turn pretty much any of your creatures you want into like a Tinderwall if you want, which can be a really big burst of mana. It's a lot of red mana, which isn't super duper useful, but sometimes when you're like underworld breaching, you want to turn your like orc army that has a bunch of counters on it into a Tinderwall, and then move those counters onto something else. And then because of how Rayhan works, like, so like anytime something dies with counters on it, moves on to something else, and then it's sort of this like repeated effect you get to do of those, as long as you have a creature and Rayhan, like creatures and Rayhan on board, you just keep making red mana for as many creatures as you have. And
that's really interesting. You can like fuel cards, extra cards, put them into your graveyard for your breach and stuff too.
Yeah,
that's super cool.
It's like a little thing. I don't do it very often. You don't really have to do it a lot, but I don't know. I prefer to have just like, yeah, if I can turn 1, have this like, you know, a 0/3 blocker in case there's like a turn 2 Tymna coming from somebody. Have that up, and then next turn, that's my burst of mana instead of having to like potentially risk feeding cards off of like a Rite of Flame, or playing like extra mana rocks I don't have to play for like dockside counts and stuff like that.
That's a responsible meta brain right there. We love that.
Very responsible.
That's just how I think about for Tinderwall, really, is like the big thing. If it wasn't Tinderwall, it would be Delighted Halfling, or Delightful Halfling, Delighted Halfling. And Delighted Halfling is something I would want in the list because there are a lot of legends that we want to resolve. But it's just been hard to find a slot for it, and I think my girlfriend is using my copy of it anyway. So I'm living without it for now.
Fair enough.
No, I like the Tinderwall. I think the combination of that and Soul Cauldron in a Breach deck definitely makes sense. Just being able to either eke out that 1 or 2 more red mana that you need, or just any mana in general, or oh man, you're 1 card short of like being able to breach another card, and you just sacrifice a thing, put it into the graveyard, boom, you have your next card you can use. I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah. I like how a lot of these cards, like we're moving to the 2 costs here, like Bloom Tender, Dothy Voidwalker is a great card that also synergizes with Soul Cauldron. You can just keep repeating effects. And if you have multiple creatures that aren't summoning sick, you can just keep sacking them and then moving the counter and sack them. I didn't actually recognize that synergy with Rayhan and the Cauldron before you spelled it out, but that's really, really cool and a very...
Not gonna lie, me too.
Yeah, it's a really sweet effect built into it.
When people are like, again, going back to like, oh, like why you're just playing Rayhan for the colors, right, or whatever. It's like, no, because like Cauldron, I know in other formats I think it is a lot more broken or a lot better of a card than in CDH, just because card quality here is just like so much higher than like standard or wherever. I think that there's like Yogg in Modern I think plays Cauldron,
something like that, yeah.
But like having your like 3 CMC commander that like kind of feels like it doesn't do anything, but then having another card that turns it into like, if my opponent cracks their ranger captain, now every creature I have is a ranger captain because of Rayhan and Soul Cauldron.
Right.
So it's like that's kind of hard for people to deal with sometimes. I was experimenting with like Malevolent Hermit, I think. Is that the pay
the
a
counter
blue
spell and then you like orbit or whatever?
I was like screwing around with that of like, I could just put the Hermit in Cauldron and then now every creature I have is a counter spell. Like that's
kind of sweet. Wait,
like
what?
A Gwendolyn effect from the graveyard. That's neat.
Yeah, it's like there's like a lot of like cute little things you get to do with all the counters that like add up in a grindy game. It doesn't like come up if you're like everybody's just turboing and you're like, well, yeah, my 3 CMC 3/3 doesn't do anything in this pod, but like that's what Crom is for. So
yeah, it's interesting because like your mana costs are flipped on your commanders. It's like your 5 mana cost is the one that you want early, and the 3 mana cost is the one you want late, which has been unfortunate. But
yeah, it's been interesting too because there have been times where like I don't even cast Crom and Rayhan is just like, it's 3 CMC. I now have my Fierce and my Deflecting Swat on. Nobody can attack me because I have a 3/3, and now I'm just like chilling. I think in one of our games, I did play Crom in that game, but I think it was like our round 2 in one of the tournaments we played recently, like not the last one but the one before that. Like I tutored for like Fierce and was like, I have like 2 pieces of counter spell or counter magic, and I'm just gonna sit here and like I'm maybe not developing and whatever, but like maybe this will be a draw game because I'm just showing I have this. Yeah. And then you won it instant speed in time and I cried, but it was fine.
It was a sneaky win.
Welcome to the club. You've been initiated.
Yeah.
It was defensive silence awesome. Wins. So that's a really ingenious way to break the Soul Cauldron, like meet the hardest part of like the requirements that you have to keep getting those counters. Okay, so we said Dothy Voidwalker makes a lot of sense. Dockside, obviously, what would be a deck without it? Orcish Bowmasters, Phantasmal Image, and Oracle are in the 2 cost slots, and then Ledger Shredder's in here now, but I know you've been in and out on another card that's more recently printed, right? It's like it's a different looter that clones things from the graveyard.
Yeah, Likeness Looter.
Yeah.
I love Likeness Looter. That card is sick. Originally, it was in like my original version of the list, and the whole premise behind it was that it was a way for me to loot.
Likeness Looter is sweet.
Yeah,
never read this card before. It's
like you can do some looting with it, but then also it like lets you kind of be like a sort of bad clone, kind of. The thing I had used it for before was being able to pitch Dosen and then make it a copy of Dosen without needing to cast a spell.
Wait, that's gas.
That's
Yeah.
really neat, actually.
It was kind of sick. Like I did it, I think once or twice at Mox Masters, and it was one of those things of like, oh, this Pact of Negation actually does nothing because you have this random 1/1. What do I do? And I was like, yeah, it's. And then if I screw up, I can just make it a different creature in my yard, and
then you don't pass with the Dosen in play.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That's
quickly flip it to your Tinder wall, so that way it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's neat how it's like it's that package thing, right? You got like a 2-card package right there.
Yeah, it was. I have. So like Ledger Shredder, it was Ledger Shredder and Looter because I just like having that kind of effect of like I need to get things in the yard anyway, and at least Ledger Shredder is like immediately kind of online and being like a mini Crom. It also has like the 1/1 counters synergy stuff that it gets to do, and the card I'm very excited for to put in once it's legal is Psychic Frog. This is in Modern Horizons 3.
Yeah.
It's this Demir. It's just like blue and a black, deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, draw a card, and then it's just Psychotog, so it's like discard a card, it gets a 1/1 counter, and then you can give it flying, which that's not the important part of the text, but it can just like, oh, this is a 2 CMC pitch Razaketh and my Cauldron's online. Like,
yeah, that's
like,
sweet.
This deck cannot make use of 1/1 counters. I don't know why you would be excited about this card. No, Psychic Frog seems exactly in home with this list. Yeah, I figured
Ledger pitches the force.
Yeah, as soon as you started explaining like the Soul Cauldron lines through like Tinderwall, I looked at Ledger Shredder and I went, yeah, that makes sense. This seems pretty good, and you get to move the counters on with like Rayhan and stuff, and actually builds up a stockpile, and you can start shifting them around as like your creatures get bopped one by one.
Yeah, and then it also is like, you know, it being like air quotes mini Crom, and then if it eventually, you know, if you have actual Crom out, and then you have to sack your Ledger Shredder to like a Diabolic Intent or something. Oh, now my Crom is like a 12/12 because this Ledger Shredder's been chilling here all game. And
God, that sounds like a nightmare.
Oh no, you stop my win attempt. Whatever will I do? Go to combat, hit you for 15 with the Crom.
Yeah. It's like it's sick. I love Ledger Shredder. It's the one card I've heard like people have picked up the deck. Like it's not the one card. There's a couple of cards people have been like, I think I want to swap this out, and I'm like, that's fine. It does great by me, and if it doesn't work for you, that's totally cool. But I love this bird, so I'm keeping it here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, we'll move up to 3 costs. You have Elvish Spirit Guide. Just for rituals, I'm assuming. Like,
yeah,
it's just a good way to produce mana early. And then one of my favorite cards, Eternal Witness.
Heck yeah.
It doesn't look like you can really loot with it.
Nah,
in this deck.
there's no like combos
recursion.
with Ewit. I think it's like, I don't know if I would say the best recursion that like is in these colors, but like there's a couple of things. I was testing out Squirming Emergence. I don't know if that's a card either of you have heard of. It's
I have not.
I have looked at this card a lot for various Sans white breach piles with like intuition and stuff.
That's what I was originally looking at it for as well. Like I was just like, oh, like it's either Ewit or Squirming Emergence is like where this slot would go, because Emergence is just like, it's Savine's Wreck.
It's almost Savine's Wreck.
Yeah, it doesn't have the flashback part.
Yeah, it's very close to it.
Oh, okay. This card is cool. I do think I recall some people talking about it when it first got printed or spoiled or whatever.
And that's probably where like Ewit would be if like Squirming Emergence was like did have flashback or something. Like,
yeah.
But I just like Ewit. It's another creature, and being on Survival of the Fittest, we do kind of need like a certain amount of creatures that we need to see just to have that card be online. And it's also just like there's a lot of cute things you can do with like neoforming like your Dockside into an Ewit, and then neoforming your Ewit into like a clone or something, and like there's a lot of cute little like things like that, but no actual like loops for Ewit.
I always feel like the floor on Eternal Witness is always really, really good. At worst, it's pick up your fetch lane. You can now make another land drop.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's literally, the floor of this card is regrowth, but also you've cast a Savannah lands. Like,
Yeah.
It's literally the floor of the card.
Yeah, like I know I've been playing on MTGO a bit more. We got like content creator accounts for it, so we got to like just kind of go on and play. Very different, very, very different than any other type of CEDH. It's very hard to deal with.
That's what I've heard.
It's fun, but it's like, oh, this is a different, like, a whole
Just a different game, right?
Yeah, but last night, it was in one of my games, it was like, I was in like top deck for like, just top deck limbo for the entirety of the game. Like, everybody was like being responsible and paying for my wrist stick, and just like, I was like, wow, this stinks. Like I feel like we're just getting choked out. And then I top deck an Ewit, and I'm like, oh, this just gets me this Diabolic Intent that I sacked earlier, which gets me Breach, and then I win the game. And I was like, yeah, why would I ever remove this card? Like, why would I get rid of this?
Oh,
like,
I swear by Eternal Witness. The card is so good.
It's
a really good toolbox piece.
Okay, and then we talked about Mayhem Devil a little bit earlier. It's a phenomenal stacks piece. It also combos with Massacre Girl Wombo combo. Oppo, once again, crazy good stacks piece. Kind of like almost a default include in blacklists. Simeon Guide, more ritual mana. Spellseeker is another tutor that you can sort of like chain up again 3 to 4 with Neoforms or like a DI or something like that. So
yeah,
totally get that inclusion. Oh,
the big thing I would say the big thing with Spellseeker is that it technically makes like survival, like air quotes, so like a 1-card win con.
It does.
Like you get to like pitch a creature, get Razaketh, pitch Razaketh, get Spellseeker, and then get Reanimate, and then you're like,
you've cast Razaketh for
you just done it
or less if you do it at end step. Okay, that's neat.
It's that it also gets Born Upon a Wind, which I was not high on until I started learning how to use it properly. And I was like,
started casting it and winning right off the top.
Yeah,
of it.
like I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like, yeah. If I actually plan to use this card, it's pretty good. Like, dang.
Yeah, that card's really, really broken. I keep forgetting this is a Razaketh deck, though, but we'll get to it down here at the bottom. So, Massacre Girl, super sweet include. I know you talked a little bit about it. Was there anything else you wanted to say about it?
Not a ton. Like, the only thing I want to preface is, like, the 3 and 4 drop slots in this deck are things that are pretty malleable. Like, this is the part where, like, I have... Like, in my sideboard, this is where, like, I had Talion, which I've talked with Atlas about a bunch about Talion. I had Toski, which is, like, what I have in paper right now is Toski, and then, but, like, it's basically the big part of this deck, or another kind of thing to learn with this deck, is your 4-drop slot is what you're turning Rayhan into with Neoform. Which is, like, I know that's 1 card. It's not, like, a huge thing. But, like, having access to, like, cool, like, turn 2, like, Rayhan maybe, turn 3, or turn 1. If you can turn 1 Rayhan, turn 2 Neoform it into, like, you know, into a Talion, or into a Toski, or into a Metamorph, which turns into a
Whatever.
1 ring.
Yeah.
Like, it's, like, that's, like, one of the pivots for this deck, is being able to be, like, all right, I'm going to take this commander that maybe isn't doing a lot for me right now, and I can just make it into a better card. And that's what this 4-drop slot is. Massacre Girl is just super duper good in, like, kind of grindy creature metas. I play against a mono-white Elishnorn deck as my, like, it's my girlfriend's deck, and we play against it, like, I play against it multiple times a week, and having some type of answer to killing stacks pieces
is required.
Is required, and Massacre Girl paired with, like, a bunch of the other things like Mayhem Devil and Bowmasters is, like, it's just a really good way to, like, not only lower combat damage from your opponents, but turn those effects into card draw and really just, like, play this kind of board control.
It also means that you already can't be attacked a lot just because your
Yeah.
commanders, Rayhan and Crom, are just really, really good stat lines for it. But Massacre Girl says, yeah, you can never attack into me because I'm just going to profit off of it.
Literally. It's that, and at one point I had like Massacre Girl and Toski in the list, and like the few games that I had them both on board, people were like, great. So like, I'm just, you're forcing me to get beat, because even if I block, you're drawing a card. And I'm like, yeah, sorry, like it's that's just the situation you're in now.
Damn,
and
I'm sorry, I'm out here suffering from success right now.
yeah, like it's pretty cool that the 4-drop slot and what we will see is the 6-drop slot are like, those are the ones that I think are where like you kind of get your own spice in, and like it can be any of those kind of cards that are going to be really good in like your meta.
Oh yeah, any deck that gets to play Neoform specifically,
Yeah.
you get a little bit of freedom with your CMCs and what you're running in the command zone to kind of just tech in whatever little spice you want.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so like you mentioned Phyrexian Metamorph, that card at this point, we don't even need to say anything about it. It's one ring, right?
Yeah.
And then Niv Mizzet, your 6-cost slot. You said it's been Niv, it's been Con Sphinx, maybe something else at some point.
Yeah, it's it bounces between Niv and Con Sphinx. It really depends on like what else is in the deck. I know it was Con Sphinx at Punt City, and the one game that I saw it and like was able to, I think I was like I think I neoformed Crom into Con Sphinx that game. It was like turn 3 neoforming Crom into Con Sphinx, and I was like, I have no cards in hand, everybody. This was my one play. And the table were like, all right, I think we maybe need you to draw counter magic because like this game's kind of going crazy. So sure, like let's let this resolve. I drew, I think like 30 to 40 cards, maybe more
Holy.
in that turn rotation. And we didn't get to my turn. So
That is absolutely tragic.
yeah. So it was one of those things of like, you know, this card is really, really good, but also it makes everybody like kind of cry and like freak out. Like anything that makes people's alarm bells go off, I think is something I don't like to run, and that's why I'm back on Niv. Also because it works really well with Massacre Girl, but Niv makes people a little bit less scared immediately than Con Sphinx does.
Yes.
Because Con Sphinx is like this is on board, oh my god, she's gonna draw at least 6 cards like going into her next turn. That's crazy. We need to deal with this. While Niv Mizzet can be this like slow burn, like, yeah, I'm only drawing as many cards as you cast instants and sorceries, and
Yeah, that's what I tell people. It's a stacks piece. As a purveyor of Niv Mizzeterism, yeah, the card, like you said, Sphinx land. It's on cast. Sphinx can just be answered immediately. Niv Mizzet literally cannot be countered. So if you're hard casting it, which is more challenging to do, but you already get a bonus. It's got a better stat line, and like you said, like the whole 2-for-1 makes people just panic as soon as they see the card.
Yeah.
Like you can worldly tutor for the card, and it's not even close to being like we're turn 1, 2, 3, whatever, worldly tutor, don't even have the mana to cast either of these, and people go, oh my god, this is something I'm going to have to deal with. Con Sphinx is it's a card that lands and wins the game, whereas Niv is like a card that as long as it's not in your command zone, you typically aren't playing a curiosity combo with it. It like lands and then like it dings like an Orcish Bowmasters that's beating the table to death, or like kills off a Ragavan that's creating too much mana for someone, answers this thing, that thing. If there's a stack for it, like pings the person who's like casting all the spells to try and win the game. And then like you said, you only draw the cards if they're casting a specific type of spell. They can still play the game through the Niv, and like you want, even if they cast it as their short trees, you might not even draw that much. It's interaction right up until a stop.
Literally. I think the other big thing, just like with this deck and like maybe my philosophy in general, is like I don't like to play things that like make people get, you know, I don't like to make the red alert go off until it's already like over, like until you're already dead.
Yes.
I like to chill. Like I don't mind like land dork passing for a couple of turns with a handful of interaction, because I know eventually I'm either going to just draw enough cards naturally, and I have enough good cards that, like, if I see a demonic tutor, that demonic tutor in, like, turn 4 or 5 might just be all I needed to win here, and not, I'm not losing for, like, the first couple turns. And it's also just way easier to, like, not get hated out of a game if you're not doing, like, super duper scary things. Like, if you're kind of playing the good guy a little bit, like being like, oh yeah, I got a handful interaction, or like, this Bowmasters is actually keeping this Tymna player at bay really hard, so you don't want to get rid of it, or like, they can't win through my Dothy, so like, you gotta leave my Dothy on board. Like, those kind of things is like, I don't know. I don't know if it's like a table politics thing, or if it's just like easier to not.
I just think that's good play. Like,
Yeah.
I just think
it's just
play
smart.
pattern.
Yeah.
I love to position myself as the good guy. It's like, there's one turbo player in my pod, they're the bad guy. Direct all your hate over there. I'm just gonna play my draw engine, like a mana dork, counter the turbo player spells, and like counter somebody else's win attempt. But I'm just gonna develop my like advantage engines and stacks pieces, and then, like you said, once it's over, that's when I'm jamming the win.
Yeah, and that was the thing with Niv. Was also, like, briefly after Punt City, I was having a whole nother, like, identity crisis with the deck, and I was like, everyone there, like, it felt like people got almost like encouraged to not play the way that I play. So maybe I make a version of this deck that is like that. Maybe I take out Niv Mizzet and a couple of the 4-drops, and I go like the Nas route. I had, for a weekend, I had like Ad Nauseam and a couple more rituals and artifacts and stuff in, and I still kept Razaketh in because I was like, that's the whole point of this deck. And if I hit a Razaketh off my Nas, then like, bad luck, I guess. But I was like, yeah, like, let's see how this feels. And the comfort of being able to say you aren't an Ad Nauseam deck.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Like, I was taking it for granted so bad. As soon as I was like, I had one weekend where I resolved like back-to-back Nauses and just won off of it. Immediately, my girlfriend was just like, yeah, so as long as that's in your deck, I'm blowing up your spot. I'm telling everybody to just beat the heck out of you. And I'm like,
yeah,
I don't want that. I don't like that anymore. Like,
that's been about my experience every time I've made the crucial mistake to put Ad Nauseam in my deck in our neck of the woods. Is I'll sit down and someone go, do you have Ad Nauseam in your deck? Fully knowing that I have Ad Nauseam in my deck, and I cannot say no. I'll say like everything else that's not no, but I can't say no. Yeah. And I'm just like, well, these are the repercussions for my actions, I guess. I will not play this card now.
Yeah.
There are some decks that can get away with it. Like, if you're going fast, or you're like Rogsai, or if you like have the option to pivot off Nas really reliably, like farm, card's great, right? But there are some lists, like decks that aren't those. You just can't do that here.
Yeah. No, like, that was the other thing too, was like knowing, I don't think I will ever resolve an Ad Nas like in our local meta. Like, even if I like every game that I've sat down, I will like my pre-game action is like, I'm not a Nas deck. I'm not a Nas deck. I know everyone thinks these colors are just turbo colors. They're not. I'm chilling. Please don't attack me. And everyone's like, okay. And then if they like, I think in another one of our games we played, Atlas, I think it was like, I don't remember.
I think it was that Tivit player, right?
I think it was Tivit. Yeah.
Like,
Tivit was like,
you're not. They're not.
And you were just like, no, like, you shouldn't. Like, you're good. Like, you shouldn't do that. And,
don't even focus on me.
Yeah. You're like, I'm not on Nas, and the Tivit player's like, I don't know. And I was like, no, I swear she's not. I've seen it fired after this.
Like, I was just like, please, you have to listen to me. Like, I know it's crazy, but like, and that's I will never. I don't. In these colors, or at least in this deck, I don't think I will ever go back to it. As good as culling ritualing into an Ad Nauseam felt.
Oh my goodness.
Like, that is like a high I will never ever feel again, and I'm okay with that. I can live with it, because then I don't need to deal with the pain.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, well, now we've mentioned it a number of times, but now the 8 cost slot.
Oh yeah.
Here it is. Talk about Razaketh.
The only.
Razaketh. I love Razaketh. Like, as somebody who, like, I would still call myself very new to CDH. Like, I started playing like a little over a year ago. So like I consider myself like fairly new, and I know that the age of when Razaketh was like a really, really big like boogeyman of the format. If that was a thing, I don't even know my history for CDH.
It was. There was a time where Razaketh was the thing to be doing.
Yeah, like I know, like I think there was a recent like I think Matthew like Lamora's Cards like put out a thing talking about like old archetypes that maybe don't hold up these days, and brought up Razaketh decks, and I immediately went to his DMs and was just like, "How dare you keep my name out your mouth? Like, come on!" Like, because me and him have played against each other so many times, and it's just been like he's like, "You're the only one still doing it. Like, you're doing good, but you're the only one doing it." And I was like, "Yeah, fair." I don't know. I think with Cauldron, this like Cauldron is kind of what made this deck a thing, because of like Rayhan and those 1/1 counter synergies, but also like having a pseudo reanimate with Soul Cauldron that lets you just turn any creature you have into a Razaketh. It's really hard to interact with. Like, if a lot of the time people almost want me to resolve my Soul Cauldron because it also stops like Underworld Breach or other kind of.
Yeah, guys, come on! I can start eating the breach player's graveyard. You want to let this resolve? Yeah,
like that, or like, oh, there might be like I've had games before where like there was I think it was Mox Masters. One of the people in our top 4 pod was playing a Hermit Druid deck, and I was like, I'm gonna tutor for Hermit, or I'm gonna tutor for Soul Cauldron in this matchup because I know that they're a Hermit Druid deck. And everybody there was like, "How do you know that?" I'm like, "I played against them in Swiss, and they beat me with the Hermit Druid because I did not get my Soul Cauldron. So I am not."
So let me get there.
Yeah, I'm like, they were my only loss in Swiss, and I'm not making that mistake again. And since then, it's been like, oh, it's almost like another sort of stacks piece that people are like, cool, that's fine, like that's cool. And then like suddenly I've turned my whole board into Bloom Tenders, and they're all like, huh, that's a lot of mana.
That is a lot of mana.
That, and also it's just like, the funny thing about Razaketh is, yeah, it's 8 mana, but like running all of these dorks and like mana production, there have been so many games where I just hard cast a Razaketh and win.
Oh yeah.
And people are like, oh, I don't have a creature counter to hit Razaketh, this 8-drop, and I'm like, yeah, that's how it goes. Like,
or I imagine it's a really good dockside payoff as well.
Yeah, like literally, like as soon as you can hit 8 mana, and like either just like naturally or off of like Culling Ritual or something like that, you are threatening a Razaketh, and just having near infinite tutors, like obviously as much as your life total exists, and that being the only thing in this deck that really hurts our life total, other than I think Deluge is the only other kind of really big life total.
So one I see
drain.
Anyway.
Like, aside from that, like this is in the primer for it. I say like, oh, Timna Krom gets to run ad nauseum, and then this is our ad nause is Razaketh. This is our life payout. It's not as heavy. And sometimes it's like a little weird, and maybe I don't know if I would say easier to interact with, but like there are different types of interaction that hit it.
More interactable.
But when it happens,
is usually the term I go for.
Yeah, but just like Nas, a lot of the time, if you resolve something that gets a Razaketh effect on board, you're probably winning the game. Yeah, so I like Razaketh. It's fun. I have Razakeths on my playmat that I got made for my birthday, along with like Rayhan and Crom and my little Boo token, because I used to run Minsk and Boo in the 99 of this, and I took it out after Punt City actually, because it's another card that makes everybody like scream. Like I had multiple pods in Punt City where I resolved like a turn 2 Minsk and Boo, and everybody suddenly thought I was the problem. And
you're like, why? It's just a
what
fucker.
I literally had like at least 2 pods who were just like, oh yeah, she can't have that. Like like it's too much advantage. And I was like, but there's a Ristic, like there's a One Ring on board already. Like
what do you mean?
I'm like, what is happening?
I'm
like,
just making a big hamster.
I'm like, just do the math. Like, yeah, I draw 4 every other turn, but like, I'm also gonna remove like this problem creature, or I'm gonna just do combat damage or whatever. And it's so hard to reason with people. I think a lot of people here, at least from like, I don't know if this is true, but like I know Minsc and Boo is really, really good in like other formats, like 60 card formats, and maybe that reputation is still holding over into CDH. That's what happened when I was playing the deck. Was a lot of the time it would be like, we can't let the Gruul deck draw 4 cards. It's too much. And I'm
oh
like,
no, red and green's gonna do
Gruul,
so much with 4 cards.
That's literally what I would have to say to people. It's just like, please, just what am I gonna draw? like what? Truthfully, like aside from drawing specifically Dockside Temur Sabertooth, what do I got that scares you?
Right? That's you're like, I'm gonna cast my ad nauseum, I guess. My hand is red green.
Yeah. So it was like, that's why it's not in the deck anymore. I also was on Oko at one point. To talk about Planeswalkers a teeny tiny bit. I was running Oko like really early on. And that card slapped, but again, also was a like, this hits the board and suddenly everybody thinks I'm evil.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
the card is like, I feel like it comes and goes in waves, and the waves are really just dependent on people's memory and where the meta is. Because I think there are times where it's like when Sisay and Kinnan are absolutely huge, just dominating the format, or effects like that, or maybe something like Tivit, like Oko, like as long as it corresponds with like people's like short-term memory, they just forget, right? They're like, Oko seems fine, that card's really good, and then it's super powerful and just takes a game. And like 2 months later, everyone's like, oh my god, answer that immediately, and you're literally just casting Civic Vindicate. Like it's not good after that.
Yeah, and I was just like that's exactly what happened. Where it's actually so funny because when I talk to a bunch of the people that I like play with online, or like if I go on trips to like conventions and stuff, the people that I get to see, I talk to them about our meta up here, and like when I mentioned that there's like, I think I want to say like 2 Sisay pilots maybe. I think
it's
2
pretty
or 3.
low. There's 3 that I
substantially low. There's 3 that I know of.
There's like 3, and then like I think I've played against Kinnan like once in our local, like
You're
ever.
so lucky.
Oh my god.
So lucky.
I wish I could only play once against Kinnan. Oh my god.
I think like I only have 1 game in memory like playing against a Kinnan in our locals, and I was like, maybe there's just not a lot of Kinnans here. I don't know, because it doesn't seem like Kinnan ever does very well. Like I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I just haven't seen it.
Can I go to your timeline, please?
Yeah, right. You're just dodging them, and I just want those skills, right? Because like I've definitely been in double Kinnan pods. So I'm just, oh my god, it's over.
Like I play, like I'm very used to it being like the Mox Masters like online meta, where like almost every single pod is at least 1 blue farm, 1 Kinnan, 1 Sisay, or multiples of either of those, and then something else. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it also might just be the condensed player pool, because we have like 60-ish players usually, and like maybe that's why I haven't ran into them. I don't know. Maybe I'm just lucky. I feel you. Like every time I've played against a Kinnan, I'm like, what do I do? Like I hate this, and that's also partially why Massacre Girl was in here. Was I was playing against a Kinnan for like one of my friends who was playing Kinnan pretty regularly, and I was like, okay, like this just helps like my Bowmaster kill mana dorks, and then I draw cards, and like that's just gonna keep me ahead of this, of just like killing all their mana production. And yeah, it's maybe not as good as like, I don't know, just straight up like I think at one point I was gonna play Manglehorn to deal with it.
Ooh,
because I love Manglehorn. It's like one of my favorite
card.
One of my favorite green creatures, and it also just like makes Docksides bigger, but that also applies to everyone else in the pod who's playing red. So it's like, yeah, I don't know.
Dockside count gonna grow kind of regardless.
Yeah. I don't know how we got on here other than talking about Razaketh, but
Yeah, we're just talking about the Demon Man. That's all
yeah.
All right. Well, now the things that the Demon Man gets. Let's move to some sorceries.
Yeah, so for sorceries, we're looking pretty stock, pretty standard. We got a couple weirdo cards in here. Not really weirdo cards. Gamble, breach deck, I imagine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I hate Gamble, truthfully. I hate this card, but every time it's like it's one of those things, it's like cool, Gamble is perfect, like it's almost like a tutor that I think is better the later the game is, because then I'm like, cool, I want things in my yard now.
It's another Entomb effect, yeah.
Yeah, but then early game, I'm like, do I keep this hand that's like Gamble for Ristic and then turn 2 Ristic? Oh god.
Please don't hit the Ristic. Please don't hit my Mana Crypt, please.
Or the Mana Crypt, or
yeah. And
my dork or whatever, you know.
Almost every time, at least when we are playing on stream, I will like turn to my girlfriend, who is our co-host, and be like, all right, you're gonna be the one who's picking the card, and she snipes it, and then I'm like, why do I play this card? Like, it's what is the point of, like, I didn't want this to be an Entomb.
Well, you can cast your Eternal Witness and the Iristic Study back.
Yeah,
you can.
True.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I am always so medium on Gamble. I really like it in anything that's 2-color, because it's one of the 2 tutors you probably have access to. It's just a necessity. I feel like as soon as I enter like 3 colors and 4 colors, I'm like, okay, I can just play better options at this point for that slot. But even in like breach decks, I'm always like, Gamble's like just such a stinker.
Literally
of a card
gamble.
sometimes. It's literally a gamble.
Yeah.
Okay. Reanimate. We kind of talked about that. We're a reanimator deck. We like creatures in the yard. Don't really need to talk about that. Demonic Tutor, Diabolic Intent. 22 creatures on DI. Seems fine enough.
Yeah. Like, I think the big thing is, like another thing about Rayhan. I know it's 3 mana, so it's obviously not as good as like Rograk or like a 2 CMC commander. But it is also just sack fodder. That is kind of the use of it. And like, I wasn't on Diabolic Intent for a bit, but then I was just like, I'm fine with sacking Rayhan sometimes just to get any card I need. Like if that's the position I'm in, like maybe I'm on a low mull that is like a turn 2 Rayhan and then a tutor and like some interaction or something. Like, I guess I will live with that, or I'm just gonna live with getting a tutor. Like that's fine.
Oh yeah. Being able to just move around just the power just on demand, I think, is totally reasonable. Very, very fair. Okay. We got Finale. We got Neoform. Just we're in green, baby. That's what we do.
Literally.
Eldritch, same as that. And then we got some spice kind of coming up in the 3 and 4 drops. We got Life Death. We got Mean Betrayal, Toxic Deluge, and Culling Ritual. You're on the full like Razaketh's line, more or less, right? With Life Death and LED and Ewit?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, like that's the only other thing with like Ewit. I don't think I've ever needed to execute it. So it's like Life Death is almost entirely here just as like a second reanimator effect. There have been like a couple of games where I've just been like, I dump Razaketh, put it in the Cauldron, and then all my lands are creatures, and I just win. The thing I've been doing a lot more with the life half is Cradle, like turning all of my I'll get Cradle out, and then all of my lands are now creatures, and then I just have a crazy amount of mana.
That's pretty good.
Wait, hold on, that's insane.
Like, I've had multiple games before where I'm like, cool, like I'm about to turn my Cradle into like, instead of it just being like 3, I'm about to turn it into like 9 green mana, and again, it's like, as long as I have other colors to go with that, that's just like a giant ritual like Tinderwall can kind of be, and it's just kind of making extra uses out of it that aren't just it being purely there for either just Razaketh or just being a like personal reanimate. The unfortunate part about the death side is it's only for your yard, and like reanimate can target any opponent's yard or like your yard or anybody's, and like if death was any graveyard, this would be broken.
Oh yeah,
I'd be so happy. But it's mostly just there for that, like, and to go with Razaketh and everything.
Yeah, because life death, you just don't see a lot of life death these days unless you are like a dedicated, like, all in on the Razaketh's line specifically as the only way you finish out the game kind of plan.
Yeah.
But I think that I completely mislooked the synergy of life and Gaia's Cradle. That's insane.
It's very fun. Like, one of the games I played very recently, and this is like more of the inverse of like this is a horror story, was I did it and then forgot that one of my opponents had a Linvala on board.
Oh,
and was
no.
Like, and was like, oh no, they're all oh my god, this cradle can't tap now. Oh no, okay. And then it was a 1v1 at that point, like everyone else was dead, and I was like, yeah, you got it, you're good. I'm gonna reset a little.
Oh your god, that's awful.
Oh.
Yeah, like I was just like, oh, yep, that's what I get for getting a little rusty against the stacks deck. Let's go next. Come on.
Oh, that's sweet. I love that. Meme Betrayal, Toxic Deluge, Calling Ritual, kind of just good card alert, right?
Yeah, the thing I want to call about with Deluge is I normally would not be running Deluge. It is part of my little Massacre Girl like package because it makes all your like every creature -X/-X, which with Massacre Girl, if a creature dies and it had 0 toughness, you draw a card. So pretty much you get to like Massacre Girl turns Toxic Deluge into like draw X equal to the amount of creatures you're killing with Deluge. So it's pretty good.
That seems like a really strong effect, yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of I think like the big downside of playing like a sweeper like Deluge, or I know Fire Covenant is something that Steven plays in his list. It's like obviously you're trading one card, at least with Deluge you are trading your one card, a bunch of life, and then your whole board usually to like deal with a threat or just deal with a bunch of stuff. And at least with Massacre Girl, that kind of recoups you on a bunch of cards that you're going to be losing. And also, if it's just like I run Forbidden Orchard. I normally wouldn't run Forbidden Orchard because I don't like that card. I don't like giving my opponents creatures. But with the Massacre Girl stuff,
it's just free.
It's just that and Calling Ritual. It's like cool. Like I have 2 payoffs that will either net me mana or net me card draw, and like that just kind of ties into it. I also wasn't on Calling Ritual for a very long time because I was pretty much just like, what do I need all that mana for? Who needs what? Why would I run that? Who needs all this green and black mana? And then I'm like, I do. I definitely need that. It's such a good card. Being able to just like wipe everybody's boards and then pairing with like Meme Bet or just Razaketh, or even if it is at worst wiping a board, playing Rayhan, playing like Krom if you have the mana to do it, and then everybody is sent back to the Stone Age, still pretty good.
You still have 7 power worth of attacks on the board, like you're fine. All right, well that rounds out our sorceries atlas. Let's walk on over to the instance department and see what we got.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was looking at these. I think they're basically all pretty stock on what you'd expect. You've got like counter suites with like Pact of Negation, Flusterstorm, Misstep, Swan Song, just the whole like general lot. There's a Chain of Vapor for removal and ritualing with different rocks, and like bounce your dockside, replay your dockside. The Veil of Summer is the closest thing though one gets to a silence effect without white.
I think in our finals game, that's what I like tried to force a win with, was just like, all right, I'm gonna Veil in my upkeep, and it resolved, and I'm like, somebody has an MBT.
Oh,
So done.
I do remember that.
Like,
I was staring at Endurance, which is green, Mind Break Trap, Tainted Pact for a different answer. I was like,
I'm just
I think this is fine.
I'm so cooked. Oh no. Like nobody seemed phased by it, and I was like, I'm so done. Oh god.
Yeah, that was a very fun game though. I distinctly remember you're like Veil, and I went,
okay.
Tank. I have at least 3 things that answer through this, and Kenrith is white, so like Oracle doesn't work. I think this is probably fine.
Yeah, and I was just like, that stinks. This stinks, but
Yeah.
that is almost purely what Vale is here for. Is just like, yeah, this is the poor person's silence. Like this, I'm wearing green. I gotta use something.
You test the waters. It also bowmaster proofs your board, which is kind of
yeah,
cool.
yeah. That's nice for it. And like, I don't know. I'm not on Dosen anymore because one, like it's just like if you're hard casting the Dosen, just any kind of like silence effect in response
Just
to
ruins you.
it just ruins the whole game entirely. And it's like, yeah, I don't like feeling like I'm the one who ruined the game. That's not a nice feeling. And
Much easier to complain about it when someone else does it.
yeah, and I'm totally down to just be like, you know what? If it's specifically Mindbreak Trap or like Endurance or like just any random one of like white thing that like gets through this or whatever, like I'll take the L. That's fine. I'm fine gambling on that just because I know there's probably somebody who is sitting on their like swan song and is like, dang.
Yeah, this will answer it and then it doesn't and they're like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Veil of Summer, good card. We're up on it. The Worldly Tutor and Mystical Tutor, just to get kind of whatever you want. Ritual, Dark Ritual, just to ramp into like a Crom or a Rayhan or a Culling Writ or a Ring. So many great options.
Yeah.
Consultation, kind of have to be playing it if you're on Oracle, in my opinion.
I'm so iffy on console.
The card sucks.
Yes, it's awful. Get it?
Yeah.
No,
but I do feel like if you're playing Oracle, like there's so many, especially when you're in green, right? There are so many tutors and ways to get Oracle. And like even if like hitting your demonic tutor or whatever, you can go get Thassa's Oracle. But if you're playing Consult and Tainted Pact, like then you can, if you hit your demonic tutor, you can choose to go get your Oracle as opposed to having to go get one of the other, like the other thing. So I personally believe that if you're playing Oracle as one of your primary win conditions, you should be playing both Tainted Pact and Consult, even though everyone in the world, I think at this point, can agree that Consult is a stinky card.
Very, very true. I think the big thing in this deck too is like it kind of puts this weird like I don't remember. Actually, I think it was I know I keep referencing games we've played in tournaments, but like I think there was the game were we playing with Lauren?
Yeah. No. Oh yes, that was that same game we were on Minskin Boo. Yeah,
and like there was an Eldritch Evolution on the stack, and it was like, oh, what are they getting with this? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I think they're just getting Thoracle. Like, I think we might just lose. And it was like, oh, are we just losing right now? And then they were like, yeah, I'm getting Thoracle, and I have Consult in hand. And just being able to be like, yeah, this neoforming my dork can either be like, is this a dockside? Is this just me getting like Dothy for a stacks piece? Or am I actually making a win attempt off of this creature tutor? Is like something that makes people do a lot of mental gymnastics.
Yeah, it can be really strong.
Neoform 2 is one of the scariest plays in the world because it's like that is literally any single card in the game, right?
Well, I think it was so much worse than that because it was like Eldritch to 4, and then I was like,
that literally is
like Emiel or like what is this? And there's like Oracle. I was like, oh.
yeah. And I remember all of us just being like, well, Atlas, you have a Ristic Study, so here's all the cards in the world, and then we got out of it, and I was just like, sick. Now we lose.
Drew exactly Dark Ritual with 2 mana. It was all that gets you out of a consultation. That's what that does when Kenrith's on the field.
Yeah.
Silly Kenrith. Yeah.
Silly.
Okay. Artifacts and I guess enchantments, because we only have 4 enchantments. All of it is exactly what you would expect. We have a Jeweled Lotus for a Crom, a LED because we're a Breach deck, and a Soul Cauldron because it's the Black Cauldron. That's the namesake card. Is there anything that we haven't like specifically covered on Soul Cauldron, like kind of throughout this, that needs like re-highlighting or special attention or anything?
Not really. The only thing I would want to call out is like a big thing I highlight when I'm playing the deck is that Cauldron is not really like a combo piece like people think of it in like Francisco decks or other decks. And that's something I really like about this version of the deck. I've tried out running like Obnixilis and Ballista in the 99.
Seems mid.
The thing was like, if Obnixilis had any more value other than just being like turn Rayhan into Ob and now you have like a potential combo on board. If it was anything else, then it might be better. But Ob is one of those cards where like if you didn't build the deck around it, it kind of doesn't happen a lot. Like the trigger doesn't happen a ton. Like it's still, it's still off of fetches, but like you're not playing it as your commander, so like a turn 1 Ob is like not really.
It's not realistic at all.
So it's not real. It doesn't happen.
And it just didn't feel like it was enough value in like that 4-drop slot. And that's and it's also, again, it just goes back to it's a lot easier just to say this isn't a combo piece. I'm not a Francisco deck. I'm not about to kill you. Like this is purely here to hate people out, and then it is also a reanimate, which is like
it's a lot easier for people to justify being like, I guess I don't have to counterspell this then.
Yeah. Will it get value? Absolutely. Will it stop people? 100%.
The other thing about Cauldron is that whatever you exile under it is just gone forever.
Mm-hmm.
If Cauldron gets removed, you don't get to keep anything that was exiled with it. It's like if I'm going for the Razaketh line with Cauldron out and somebody just Boseijus in response, I have lost Razaketh and I've now lost my Cauldron and any value I might have used for Cauldron this whole game. It's just all gone in one swoop. They don't get like Cauldron counters on them or anything. It's just over.
Poof, yeah.
Spilled the Cauldron potion on the floor.
It's another reason I tell people that the Cauldron, as awesome of a name as the deck is, it's not the main focus of the deck. I don't run like I forget what creature it is that gets a 2-drop, so you can tutor like ETB tutor for a 2-drop artifact like Trinket Mage or whatever.
Treasure Mage, I think, something like that. One of those. I know the exact one you're talking about.
Yeah, like I don't run that because it's like this isn't about Cauldron. It's just one of the many pivots you can make. Like if I draw Cauldron, or if I have Entomb in my hand, then I know I can set up a Cauldron, and then instant speed I can do like Entomb, Razaketh, put it in the Cauldron, get Born Upon a Wind, and just like I can just pass with all this mana up whenever I want, and that's a line I can go for and have gone for a few times of just like, I have all my mana up, like I'm just chilling, and like I got all this. You probably think I have interaction, and then if somebody tries to go for it, I'm just like, and there you go, it's over, like all on top of you, and it's great. I just wanted to call that out because that's a lot of people get really hung up on the name of the deck being like, this is, can you go deeper in the Cauldron part of it? Let's go, like, what more? And I'm like, don't go too enough. We don't need to go further. Don't put too many ingredients in this soup. Like, leave it pretty chill.
Yeah, and then 4 enchantments, as I kind of said, Mystic Remora, Survival, Breach, Rhystic Study, good cards.
Nothing more to say there.
Pretty much.
Go next to the land base, I guess, which is also like pretty stock. It's a 4-color mana base. There's a snow cover island in here, which is kind of cool. That's about it.
I'm running 1 basic, just 1 because obviously I know I've mentioned it a bunch now. I play against a mono white player. I get Path to Exiled a lot, but she also runs like a crazy amount of initiative cards, and the initiative is a mechanic not many people are familiar dealing with.
Oh, I'm familiar. I used to mess with White Plume. I used to play White Plume Adventurer. The card's gas.
Yeah. Like she's on that, and like 2 more initiative cards in there, and it's like, just having a legal target in there. It's a little thing, but like, it's nice. And I don't know. Sometimes I run into somebody who's playing back to basics, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna guarantee I get 1 land.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Those micro optimizations are really what make good players and good decks, though, right? It's like this is something you're encountering, and that it is a non-zero chance you will continue to encounter. So teching for that ahead of time. Plus, I think like if you can afford the slot, playing a basic is like probably one basic is mechanically correct most of the time, unless you're like in 5 colors. Or, like that's kind of like, and 5 colors, it's a lot harder to justify squeezing in a land that only taps for 1 color. But like 4 and everything less, I think there's a very big argument where you could be like,
definitely
I don't know that this
4,
like 10th fetch land you're playing actually does all that much for you, and you can just play one more basic.
Literally. And funnily too, like before I was running a basic, I up until pretty recently, I wasn't running Gemstone Caverns for a bit. I was
really.
I was on this kick of being like, Gemstone sucks. I hate this card. I hate going down 1 card like to get an extra mana and blah 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 blah. Like I think it's in my deck tech video on our YouTube channel where it's like me going on this little rant about how like we have to evaluate cards that are staples and blah blah blah. And then I put it back in the deck and was able to just like turn 0 Vamp Tutor and like win the next turn. And I was like, I was like, why why'd I say any of that? Why is that on the internet?
Good. I did get my first turn 1 win with Kenrith the other day because of Gemstone Caverns. That exact thing is turn 0 Worldly Tutor for Dockside.
It's
my
just
turn and it's high.
Literally, I was just like, I'm crazy. Why was I talking about this at all?
And, and when you have access to White Man, you can Lighten Tutor for your Smothering Tithe with a Mana Crypt start, and it's just gravy.
Yeah, and also just having that little bit of burst anyway of like, my 2 drops in this deck are like fairly just value-based 2 drops for the most part, but being able to be like, turn 1 Dothy, a lot of people are like, damn, that makes my plans really tough.
That just hoses me.
Yeah, like that's or even just setting up your Bloom Tender early. I was wrong, internet. Gemstones is pretty good. I was very wrong. And yeah, that's where I'll leave on that. That's really the only hot take I had about my land base was like I was not running that, and now I am.
Well, and your cool tech with Gaia's Cradle and Forbidden Orchard that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's basically all of it. I've also like I've had some people ask like, is 22 enough creatures for Cradle? And like it's
enough.
It's enough. It's awkward sometimes. Like sure, there are games where I'm like, it is the same problem as Gemstone sometimes, where like, oh, if this isn't my opener and it's my only land, like that kind of sucks. So like, I think I might have to pitch this hand because of that. But I'm kind of okay with it because the upside is just so much higher. So it's just a tiny downside there, but I love Cradle. I also will never take Cradle out of any green deck I play because my girlfriend bought it for me when we were in Vegas. She got one of the, I don't know if y'all saw those like serialized Swords to Plowshares that they had in Vegas, like MagicCon Vegas last year.
Yes,
I missed that.
Yes, I did.
Like they have like the convention exclusive secret layers that they would like give out to people randomly, and they always had like a Chase serialized card in it. And she got one of them. It was the Swords to Plowshares one, and she like was wrestling like, oh, like this is selling for like $1,500. Do I sell this? Do I keep this? Like this is an awesome bling thing. Like I get to have this awesome bling piece in my Norn deck. What do I do? And I eventually, I was in the middle of a game. She went off, sold it, bought me a Gaia's Cradle, and bought herself like a really nice piece of like magic themed jewelry, and came back mid game and just handed it to me. And I was just like, wait, you did not just buy me a Gaia's Cradle. And she was like, I sold the swords and I got you a Cradle. And I was just like, yeah, so I'm never not playing a green deck again. Thanks. I love this.
Yeah, you're locked into it at that point.
Yeah. And then, just to end off that story of it all, New Year's, while we were having our own little like New Year's party, she apparently bid on a swords for like I think it was $400, and won the bid on midnight, like at New Year's. So she woke up the next morning with like, hey, you got this serialized Swords to Plowshares. And she was like, well, now I get to have the bling, and I made money off of it. So
let's go.
Yeah, it was sick. And now whenever she's playing Norn, she has so many serialized cards in that deck. It's disgusting. It's very funny. Like her whole deck is bling, but she'll purposely just be like, swords, and then like kind of flash it around a little bit. It's like serialized. It's pretty good. But yeah, that's the end of that story. Enough of my little ramble.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on.
That's super cool. Yeah, thank you. This has been really, really fun. I like this list. This is a cool list.
It's very unique and obviously very powerful.
Yeah, it's very. The thing I would also say is like, calling it. I think maybe calling it like Timnacrom, but with green, does also lead people a little astray sometimes because you don't have that much power in the command zone. It's not that, like, I wouldn't say simple. I wouldn't call Timnacrom simple to pilot, but like it's there's a lot
straightforward sometimes.
Yeah, there's a lot of the nuances of green that many players, I think, aren't super duper familiar with if they're just like picking this deck up, especially because green gets used a little bit differently in a lot of other green decks, and also Reanimator is just like not as popular as it used to be. So like, I guess all that is, take this with a grain of salt. This deck is very, very powerful, but it does have a bit of a learning curve, and I've talked to and seen many people who pick up the deck and are like, this was really cool, I don't get it though, and then go on to something else. And I was like, that's fine. That's it. Sometimes it's not for everybody, and don't beat yourself up if you don't get it, because sometimes I feel like a crazy person the way I talk about this deck. So it's fair.
I think it just means that you care about your list a lot personally.
That is true. That's true. I get a little crazy with it. Anybody who followed me talking about Minsk and Boo for like a year and a half, thinking I was some like, I don't even know. I thought I was so smart about Minsk and Boo, and then I was like, I haven't like won a game. Like,
that hits a little too close to home.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm so smart actually that it's not my fault.
You guys just don't get it. I'm too ahead of the times.
Yeah, I'm like, you're not with it. Like Minsk and Gruul is actually so good, everybody. Cope. Yeah. That was. I think it literally took Scott from like Top Deck to be like, hey, I'm gonna be real with you. Minsk and Boo has not had a top, like, it's never top 16 in the entirety that it's existed. You should swap decks. And I was like, you're giving me the wake up call like this, huh? Like, so you're really gonna do it.
So this is how you do it to me, huh?
Yeah. And then he was like, I'm gonna do it. Like, you need to hear it, because I think you're beating yourself up too much. Which is another thing for me to say. Don't be afraid to switch decks. I know it's fun to put all of your personality into one deck, and like all of your love and care into one deck, which is, I think, what all of us here probably do. But
only a little bit. I mean, you can't prove anything.
Yeah, but still, love it. Like, if you're not having fun, like that's the heart of it. As long as you're having fun and you're playing, if you're playing the same deck, who cares then? You know, like, as long as you're having a good time.
Exactly. Well, hey, thanks once again for coming on. Where any like shout outs, any things that people need to be aware of that are in the doobly-doo?
I don't know. Me and my girlfriend we are Commander's Cauldron. That's our stream that we do. We stream on Fridays and Sundays. We play Cedh and just have a bunch of people on. Usually, well, I think probably have Atlas on soon.
I think that's the plan. Yeah,
the plan. So that'd be very fun. I want to get more of the local people on, because I like focusing. I'm focusing a lot more on the local scene lately, and not on the online scene. I put a lot into like Mox Masters and everything, and I want to focus on Seattle. I like our local meta a lot, and focusing on that is really nice. So I'm doing that. Follow me on Twitter. That's where I have all my following. _Priscilla. It'll probably be down there in the doobly-doo. Yep,
doobly-doo and show notes.
Yeah. I think that's basically it. Yeah, I don't have much more to do or to talk about or plug. So thank you so much for having me on, though. This is like super fun. I love getting to talk about this deck, and Yeah, it's just been so good. This makes me feel very happy.
Yeah, it
Hey,
was awesome.
what's
Thanks
all
for coming.
about? Yeah, thank you. Atlas, pleasure as always, my friend.
Yep, it's been a pleasure.
Excellent. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time.